Hey guys, day 2 of our prerequisites. So today we are going to be talking about the Cartesian coordinate system. So our objectives, or what we're going to learn about today, are the Cartesian plane, absolute value of a real number, distance formula, midpoint formula, equations of a circle, and then some applications. So these will be a good foundation for future lessons when we get into our trig and pre-calc. So let's talk about absolute value. So your absolute value is just always going to be a positive number, okay? So here, properties of an absolute value, if you have an absolute value, everything is going to be greater than 0, okay? Absolute value of a negative a is always going to be equal to the absolute value of a positive a, because both of them result in a positive number. Okay, if we multiply a times b inside of an absolute value, it's the equivalent of multiplying the absolute value of a times the absolute value of b. And then here, again, absolute value of a divided by b would be the same thing as the absolute value of a divided by the absolute value of b, where b cannot equal 0. If you recall, again, b, or the denominator, can never equal 0. So just a couple examples. I'm not going to take a lot of time on these, but 3 plus the absolute value of negative 3. Absolute value of negative 3 is a positive 3, so this would just be 3 plus 3, which equals 6. Okay, I'm going to use a darker color. I hope that you guys can see this video a little bit better. 2 minus the absolute value of negative 2. Again, absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, so that would be 2 minus 2, which equals 0. Okay, here, negative 2 times 3 inside of absolute value, so we're going to simplify that. That would be a negative 6. Absolute value of a negative 6 equals positive 6. And then negative 2 divided by the absolute value of negative 2 would just be negative 2 divided by 2, which is equal to negative 1. Okay, so just simple. Absolute value of any number is a positive, and just kind of a quick little review over that. So the reason why we use absolute value is because it kind of talks about distance. So the distance between A and B is the absolute value of the difference of these two numbers, okay? Anytime you think about distance traveled, it's always a positive number, right? You can't travel a negative distance. Even if you walk backwards, that's still a positive distance. So distance is always a positive number. So that's why we have to take the absolute value. But if we have, point A, point B, we find the difference in those, and then the absolute value of that is our distance between the two numbers. So some examples, if we have finding the distance between negative 1 on a number line is right here, and then positive 4 is right here. Okay, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. Okay, so the formula for that would be the absolute value of A minus B. A doesn't matter, B doesn't matter. If you see here, these are transversal. It doesn't matter which one comes first, as long as you find the difference. So you can do 4 minus a negative 1. That's keep, change. 4 plus 1 is 5, absolute value of 5. Here we have negative 1 minus 4. Negative 1 minus 4 is a negative 5. Absolute value of a negative 5 is 5. So no matter what way you look at it, negative 1 and 4 are 5 units apart. Okay, so the distance is 5. So here we have find the distance between negative 5 and negative 17. So all we have to do is find the absolute value of negative 5 minus 17, negative 17, sorry. So keep, change. Negative 5 plus 17 is 12. So the absolute value of 12 is 12. Okay, so the distance, and if you think about it on a number line, negative 5 is here, negative 17 is here, they're 12 units apart. Okay, and again, distance is always positive. So now let's talk about if we have two coordinate points. So finding distance between P and Q. So we have x1, y1, and then x2, y2. So to find the distance in a coordinate point of 2 points, we are going to use this distance formula right here. So we have the square root of x1 minus x2, so the difference between the x's squared plus the difference between the y's squared. Okay, so here we have an example. So we're finding the distance between these 2 points. I always like to label these. So here we have x1 and then y1. Here we have x2 and y2. So now we simply plug these numbers in to the equation. Okay, so we have 1 minus 6 squared plus 5 minus 2 squared. Okay, be careful on this. If you do 1 minus 6, you have to do 5 minus 2. Okay, so make sure you just kind of watch that. So 1 minus 6, negative 5. Negative 5 squared is positive 25. You will always get a positive number out here, okay? always, whatever you square, a negative or a positive, it results in a positive number. Here, 5 minus 2, that's 3. 3 squared is 9. 5 plus 9 would be 34, or the square root of 34, which is equivalent to 5.89. Okay, so this would be your exact answer. So kind of start thinking like if it says asking for the exact answer, it's the square root of 34, and this is your approximate answer. Because 5.83, this is the square root of 34 does not terminate, so there's no exact decimal. So you can't say that 5.83 is your exact answer because there's rounding issues and errors. So it kind of depends on how Math Excel is asking or presenting, if it wants the exact or the approximate. Okay. So now let's try, there's one of these in your homework problems. So I wanted to pull it up and kind of do it with you. So it says to find the area and perimeter of the figure determined by the points. So we have 3 points. Hopefully that kind of is, you know, what figure has 3 points? Triangle. Okay, so very roughly, I'm going to make a graph. So we have negative 5, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3 is right here. Here, again, I'm going to use black, sorry. And then we have 0, negative 1. And then we have 4, 4. Okay, so again, I very, very roughly graphed this just because I wanted to visualize. I'm a very visual person. If I can draw something, I'm gonna draw it. Okay, so I'm gonna say this is A, B, and C. So this is A, this is B, and this is C. Okay, so we need to find the distance. So basically we're finding the area and perimeter of this triangle. Okay, so area of a triangle is half the base times your height, and the perimeter of this triangle is just add up all your 3 sides. So I don't know, just add up all your 3 sides. Side A plus B plus C. Okay, probably a more geometrical, appropriate way to say that. Add up all your sides. Okay, so we have, so the distance between A and B. So this is where you're gonna need our distance formula. So distance is the square root of negative 5 minus 0 squared, and then 3 plus 3 minus or plus 1. I don't want to do that shortcut on the first one. So we have a 3 minus a negative 1 squared. Keep, change, change. That's going to be a positive. Okay, so negative 5 minus 0 is just negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. Plus 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 squared is 16. 25 plus 16 would be the square root of 41. Okay, so this distance here is the square root of 41. Okay, now we're going to find the distance between B and C. So distance is square root of 0 minus 4 squared plus negative 1 minus 4 squared. Okay, 0 minus 4 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. Plus 1 minus a negative 4, that would be negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. Okay, look. 16 plus 25, that's the square root of 41. Okay, so this is also the square root of 41. Okay, now let's find between A and C. So we have distance is equal to square root of negative 5 minus 4 squared plus 3 minus 4 squared. Okay, negative 5 minus 4, keep, change, change, that's negative 9. Negative 9 squared is 81. Plus, keep, change, change, negative 1 squared is 1. 81 plus 1 is the square root of 82. Okay, so this is the square root of 82. So if we look, square root of 41, square root of 41, and then the square root of 82. So this is an isosceles triangle. To be more specific, we could go into Pythagorean's theorem. If you look, 41 plus 41 is 82. This right here is a right triangle. Okay, so we have base, height, and then our hypotenuse. So square root of 41 squared plus the square root of 41 squared is equal to the square root of 82 squared. So anything squared is 41 plus, or the square root of squared, 41 square root of 82 squared is 82. 41 plus 41 is 82 equals 82. So by Pythagorean theorem, we know that this is a right triangle. Spoiler alert, same thing with your homework question. Okay, so we have our base, we have our height, we have our sides. So what we can do now is we can use our area and perimeter formulas to find our answer. So we have area is equal to half the base times your height. Well, your base and height are root 41 and root 41. So root 41 times root 41. Well, hopefully if you recall from Algebra 2, the square root of a number times the square root of a number is just that number. So these square roots cancel, so all we have to do is half of 41, which, not the square root of 41, sorry, half of 41, which half of 41 is 20.5. So our area of the circle is 20.5, okay, and then we are going to find the exact perimeter, not a decimal. So don't just plug this into your calculator and call it a day. I'm gonna erase this. So area we know is 20.5, and that's exact. It terminates, we're good. Perimeter, so A we said is square root of 41, plus B is the square root of 41, plus C would be the square root of 82, okay? Well, these are not perfect squares, obviously, that's why they are the way that they are. So if we want the exact, we're not gonna plug them into the calculator to find the decimal. We're going to just simplify this. So we have, this is like 1 root 42 plus 1 root 42. 1 plus 1 is 2 root, not 42, 41, sorry. 2 root 41 plus the square root of 82. And this right here, as weird as that sounds, that's your exact answer. That's exact, okay? So area and perimeter, and again, there's one of your homework questions just like this, so that's why I wanted to go over it. Okay, so now let's look at the midpoint. So to find the midpoint of two numbers, we add them and then divide by 2. Basically, we're taking the average of the two numbers to find the middle. Okay, so if we have like -3 plus 9, or sorry, -9 plus 3 would be -6, divided by 2 would be -3. Okay, so like on a number line, between -9 and 3, halfway between those would be your -3. Okay, so if we look at it as far as coordinate points, it would be the same thing. So we have, you add your A plus C, and then so like here, this would be A, this would be B, this would be C, and this would be D. I just like to think of it as you find the average of your X's and the average of your Y's. Okay, so your X here would be -5 and 3. So we have -5 plus 3 divided by 2. Well, -5 plus 3 is -2 over 2, which is -1. And then the second one, we do our average of our Y's. 2 plus 7, which is 9. 9 over 2 is 4.5. Okay, so that is halfway between those two coordinate points. A lot of formulas for this chapter or this section, and I know I'm going fast. Pause it if you need to. And then if that's still, you need help, email me and we can figure it out. Okay, so now let's talk about, lastly, I think, the equations of a circle. So a circle is a set of points. You know, we have a disk, we have a circle, right? So here's your radius. And so here it's the same distance all the way around. Your radius right here at this XY point, it's the same radius. Okay, so this, again, another formula is the formula of the equation of a circle. So x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. So h and k here, h and k represent your coordinate point of the center of your circle. Okay, so whatever your h is and your k is, that's your center. Okay, and then that's equal to radius squared. Well, your radius is this distance from the center to the outside of any coordinate point. Okay, so this would be your radius, and this is your h and your k. So let's look at some examples. So here we have 2 examples. So finding standard form of the equations of a circle. So if our center is -4, 1, that's our h and our k. And then our radius is 8, and that's r. So now we just simply plug this into our formula. So we have x minus h, well our h is -4, so a negative, or minus a -4 would be x minus a -4, so that would be x plus 4 squared. Our k is 1, so we have y minus k, so that would be y minus 1. Can't simplify that, so it's just y minus 1 squared. And then here our radius is 8, well 8 squared is 64. okay? So this would be A, your final. And then here for B, your center is 0, 0. That's your origin. So we have, this is H, this is K, and this is R. So we have X minus H, which our H is 0, so X minus 0. Well, you don't really minus 0, that's kind of, you don't need that, so that would just be X squared. Here we have Y minus K. Well, our K here is also 0, which also we don't need, so that's just Y squared. And that's equal to R squared, which our radius is 5. 5 squared is 25, so here would this be this equation. I think that is it. Okay, so Math Excel, there are 16 total questions. Pretty easy. That one that I did the exact, like the formula or the exact problem, hopefully that will help you. And that's probably the hardest one of this whole lesson, and then everything else is a lot better. 16 total questions. Let me know if you have any questions or issues. All right, bye.